Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Greg Gaspar to the show.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
How's everything going?
Great. Thanks for having me, Matt. Pleasure to be on.
Yeah, excited to chat with you. I'm sporting my Savannah Bananas hat. They announced their world tour schedule for 2023, so check them out, Savannah Bananas. Uh, Great to have you here. For the people who don't know who you are, give us a quick intro and then let's get into it.
Yeah, so I'm a legal cannabis industry professional, currently working in my third rec market here in Arizona. Been through Washington, California, now Arizona. Worked through several roles and mainly sales and operations. And yeah, worked both sides with, the MJ and hemp side. So pretty seasoned.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to admit I've never smoked anything in my life,
Good.
so I'm a little bit naive with a lot of this stuff, but certainly with everything in the news and it's a little controversial. So I get to hear a little bit more about it. Personally, I think it should be a national thing. A national thing. It shouldn't be a states because it's just so easy to go from one state to the next. That seems kind of silly to me. And now we have the whole Brittany Griner issue where it's like, all right, we're going to great lengths to bring her back. I'm okay with that, but let's make it not illegal or find a way to make it not illegal. I'm okay. I don't know if I would ever would, but we got to figure something out. Where do you you're in the industry? Of course, you stand with making it legal everywhere, but you've always been that way. What are your thoughts on that?
Mhm. No, and I'm totally with you on it, Matt. And to your point, now cannabis, doesn't have to be smoked. There's plenty of ways to consume, and whether that's an edible beverage, tincture, topical. There's many ways to feel the therapeutic benefit of the plant. We wouldn't be here if there wasn't medicinal benefit. And I do agree it would make it a lot less complicated if we made it legal on a federal level. You talk about the legal situations for consumers. It also makes it very complicated for producers and licensees, as many do operate in different states. There could be an oversupply in one and an undersupply in another. It doesn't necessarily make sense for us to operate in these little silos within, the specific state markets. So, and as far as, legal consumption on the broad scale, from my perspective, even though I'm currently selling smokable cannabis product, you're not going to be able to smoke everywhere, much like cigarettes, right? So I see the beverage space and edible type space as kind of that avenue in for legalization on the federal level.
You see the beverage as you talk and the edibles. Edibles, I think, was before the beverage. Beverage seems to be a hot topic right now in the industry. There's also a lot of fake, right? Fraud. People are trying to, it's not legitimate. It's just passed along as stuff, and there's a lot of uneducated consumers, myself
Mhm.
included, who maybe don't know. How do you get, you know, how do you get away from that, and how do you educate the consumer, the average consumer out there, and keep them from, getting something that's not going to give them any benefits?
Yeah, so I mean, to your point, it is very true. Education is key, and that's largely why I'm happy to be on a platform like this to get around some of the stigmas around the plant. That there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and to the in the regulated space, there are steps and procedures that need to be taken before that product hits the shelf. The product needs to be tested, needs to meet certain thresholds in order for it to be legally purchased and consumed by someone in a legal rec market. And then there's other gray areas where, it might be medicinal, where it's not strictly regulated seed to sale, like states like California, Washington, Arizona. And then on the hemp side, it is really, truly, kind of a free for all. in a sense of, you now have cannabinoids like Delta 8 and Delta 9 THC hemp that actually do not need to be made within a regulated marketplace. So essentially, you or I, Matt, we could be doing it in our garage
Yeah.
and sell it with, all the dirt and dust and everything kind of lying around there and, not made in a clean laboratory. So,
You
there
cut
does need
out
to be,
you cut out a little bit, and I think
oh, sorry.
I think you were talking about something important, is the difference between a product that is manufactured correctly, or the difference between stuff that might have THC and might not have THC, and the different types. So if you want to just
Yeah.
reiterate that.
Sorry for the connection here as I'm working currently in a large grow operation actually. But so it is tough for consumers. And I would advise, if you want to get the cleanest, healthiest product, ideally it would be through a licensed dispensary. Depending on which market you work in, these products have gone through the gambit of laboratory testing, and they'd be free of pesticides, microbials, which would be mold and other forms of mildew and things like that, and just a cleaner product in general. When you enter medicinal markets that haven't gone fully recreational in some cases, or ones that don't have this type of compliance, is what we call it, to keep it clean. It could be varying degrees of how these people operate. And then on the hemp side, we have, you can still get high off of hemp products now, which is kind of crazy. You can get the THC buzz through hemp, and there's all kinds of loopholes to operate in that realm. But there are also, different levels of people that hold themselves accountable to making a clean product. Even if it is Delta 8, doesn't mean it's dirty, but more or less anyone can make it and still take it to market. So there needs to be some reform, and making consumers aware of all the nuances that there are, and it is complicated.
There's a lot of issues that we'll talk about, but I mean, can we go full on legal today and have compliance and regulatory? I mean, are we ready for that?
Well, I think the consumer is. It does seem like to me, Matt, like
Consumer is ready. Consumer is always ready. I'm not
yeah.
talking.
Well, for the first time this year in the United States, there are more cannabis smokers than tobacco smokers.
Well, that's
To give you an idea. So, and that's just smokers, not to mention all the other methods of consuming. And legal cannabis wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for medicinal benefit. Like the plant, we are still scratching the surface on all the ailments that we could treat. And now, until it gets federally legalized or through the FDA, we can't even make the medical claims technically for all the ailments that it can treat. We have to dance around. We can't say that we heal something. We can say that we relieve something.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's medical benefits to it. I know I have family members who use it for medical benefits. But when that first started and it said, "All right, we're going to give you the medical, allow for medical," it was sort of a guise, because it's not a different. It's like having a pet that is emotional support. It's not that difficult to get a medical marijuana card. And I would probably argue that there's just as many people using that medical marijuana card for recreational use as there are people using for medical. So it's sort of like one of those silly things. Again, another reason to be like, let's have stuff that's uniform, and if we're going to get this in the hands of people, let's have it right. You mentioned that the consumer is ready. Of course, the consumer is ready. Consumer's been ready for a long time now. I'm just talking about the industry, the government, because it is something that needs to be used responsibly. The same with anything else. You can make the argument for alcohol too, and certainly causes a lot of issues out there. Um, and if you told me that alcohol was illegal or certain types back in the day, I would have been like, all right, that makes sense. Let's, and it's got to be, regulated and all that. But there's no going back on that. So it's like once you open this up, there's not going to be any going back on it. This is going to be it.
Right. So to your point, I totally agree with you on the medical certification side of it. I mean, you could say you have glaucoma or trouble sleeping, or name, the dozens of ailments that it treats, and get a medical card, which essentially more or less will give you, or you'll be paying less taxes at the register. You could buy more and pay less tax, more or less, or get higher potency products to relieve those ailments. But and it's not to argue, but I think even the average recreational user that's using it to get high, we are still using it as medicine. Whether you're relieving stress at the end of the day, you need trouble sleeping or just relaxing, and for all the reasons that you would typically light up or consume, it's like we are still using it for a medical benefit, whether you know it or not. Similar to a daily glass of wine, or however it is at the end of the day, kind of nightcap. Well, cannabis can actually be a therapeutic replacement for alcohol, let's say, where alcohol would be little to no medical benefit, actually probably cause
I mean,
medical issues.
there's some stuff that say drink a glass of wine or have a drink a day might have, some help for the heart. There's probably some value to that, but certainly the average person is abusing, and that's not. That's just in a technical sense, right? I mean, using more than maybe they should.
Right, which there are complications as well, and I know, especially on LinkedIn, which is how we met. There are ailments that have been attributed to overconsumption of cannabis, and it is something that's not often talked about or maybe swept under the rug. It's once called cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, which can lead to vomiting and an ER visit, usually extensive vomiting and then dehydration for the most part as you cleanse it out of your system. And there can be varying, a lot of conversation whether that's overconsumption of THC, where there's a link there, and whether that is clean pesticides and things like that are being used. For the most part in rec markets, they do use clean pesticides. However, now neem oil and other organic pesticides can be attributed to illness. So there's still a lot of research to be done, and as far as your body being able to absorb cannabinoids, you can clog the receptors in your body. Your endocannabinoid system is how we receive the multiple cannabinoids that come through us, and over consuming can clog those up, which means you need to consume more to feel the benefit, and it can be kind of a vicious cycle. So there does need to be more of a conversation around that, and that's again back to education.
I have a friend who was addicted to marijuana. You don't hear that often, but it could happen too.
Mhm.
But so there's always going to be downsides to anything like this. We got to try and figure out, do the positives outweigh the negatives, and how do we regulate and make sure that it's not going to cause more problems. People are doing. I don't know that any people are doing it less because it's illegal. Just you know, from the people I know, and just for what it is. So it's interesting to understand, what's the downside? Why are they not? Is it that there's a lot of money involved and the government wants a piece of it? That probably is a big factor. And there seems to be. I didn't do the numbers, but if you look at the states like Colorado and like Washington, um, a lot of money coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I mean that definitely does have a lot to play with it. Obviously it is the money involvement, and you can look at a state like Washington or Arizona that I'm in, and generally the sales numbers are actually much larger in those rec markets than even California, that has much higher population but much larger black market there. So really, yeah, there are many things at play, and to your point on your friend being addicted too, it is possible, and I would say it would be more of a mental addiction as well than a physical one, as opposed to opioids or alcohol, things like that you actually get physically addicted to, where you
Yeah.
stop, you can get hospitalized or even die. that from what I know so far will not happen with cannabis. Though, could you be addicted? Yeah, sure. Depending on what you see as an addiction, though,
Yeah,
likely not.
probably a small percentage of it. Dan wants to know about manufacturing safety. You touched on it a little bit. It's like
Yeah.
the manufacturers that are doing it are doing it safely. Now you got to make sure that the other people who are entering the market, um, if it becomes legal to do,
Right.
how
And
do they do that?
yeah, so Dan brings up a good question in the sense, and it is, somewhat multifaceted, the answer, in the sense that, in the regulated marketplaces, not so much. That their licenses are on the line, and we're talking, these licenses are millions of dollars, and they're locked into 20, 30-year leases, and they are, majority, it will be a clean product and good manufacturing practices. You have the state and Department of Health coming in. They can knock on the door and enter your facility whenever they want to. So you need to operate clean, like they're ready to come in at any time. But however, on the hemp side, or markets where it's still kind of a gray area, absolutely there would need to be some reform on safety and manufacturing. And to the point of, also, we talk about the hemp side again, CBD, Delta 8 hemp type products, it could be upwards. I've heard of even up to 8,000 brands now in the space, currently in the US. And we're probably talking about maybe 200 to 500 manufacturers that make those 8,000 brands. So usually most of those manufacturers will have, could be GMP certified. And, they, in certain states, you still have to go through their Department of Health. So, yeah, I mean, there does need to be reform. And, on the legal or on the national level, I think that's what is kind of holding it back federally, is being able to roll that out in a way that makes sense. And I
Yeah,
don't
because
think the federal governments, they're not ready.
yeah, how do you give that many licenses to the people who want to have the licenses? And my understanding was that there was a lot of some shady stuff going on with licenses that were available because there were so few of them, and like who got those? Well, the well-known people with a lot of money seem to end up getting these licenses to grow in these areas.
Right, right. Well, that brings up another part of it too, as we've gone through this in Arizona. California just did the social equity licenses to give opportunities to those that have been convicted of cannabis charges, and ethnic minorities and women and things like that, which is great on paper as an initiative. However, obviously, typically what happens is one of these people will get awarded one of the licenses, and then, one of the big dogs will come in with the big check and then more or less take over operations, regardless of who's on the license.
Yeah.
So it does take away from the spirit of the plant and the social equity program in general there. But I mean, the average person, like let's say if you or I, Matt, were to get, a cannabis license, I mean, I would have a good idea of what to do, but still I myself, the capital and, all the, just everything that it takes from the municipal, state level and everything to get registered and all the hoops to jump through. This is not a one-man show. Like you need a team, even in the smallest market.
I mean, it's looked upon a little bit in my eyes. There's parallels to the gambling world where they're trying to get stuff legalized gambling, and then you also have to worry about, is it in the wrong hands of people? Is it, drug companies or drug lords or
Yeah.
the stuff you see in the movies. And speaking of movies like The Gentleman, which is a great, great movie, if anyone's never seen it, with Matthew McConaughey. Oh, excuse me.
But
So that's part of the issue, right?
yeah, no, absolutely. It's yeah. I mean, there's many things surrounding it, honestly, and when it comes down to yeah. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, got a little allergy.
Right.
The question
Yeah.
is, it's sort of in the parallels to gambling, where you have there's
Right. Right. Right.
even legal or not, there's going to be some bad people who have power and money and influence who could.
Right, right. And, to the point of gambling, it is very similar in a sense, especially with access to capital and finance as well. Any bank or payment transactor would look at us as high risk. The same would be, gambling or the sex trade industry or things like that. We're kind of looped into the same bucket when it comes to payment transactions and things like that. So, it is very similar. And, and I would argue that, if you can legally access, gambling, then why not be able to legally access cannabis as well? And so in states like Nevada now, there are open consumption lounges and consumption spaces that are available. And, obviously many Vegas hotels would allow it, but from my understanding in Nevada, you can't have cannabis in the same hotel or space as, a casino or a gaming center as well. So non-gaming casinos have the opportunity to be cannabis friendly, or gaming casinos, they're kind of left in their own bucket. It's making a choice.
Just walk the streets and get a nice little, nice.
Right. Get your Fat Tuesdays drink.
But they have trucks driving around. So I mean, these are not, in my eyes, legit cannabis products, right? I have these stores in New York. You go in and it's like, this is, I don't know, but I've told my friends and showed them. They're like, you don't want to buy any of that.
No, and it is. It's really crazy. It takes me back to I moved to LA and took over a dispensary there in 2018 in East LA, and here we are, a licensed dispensary has gone through all the hoops and steps to offer a safe and clean product as much as possible. Meanwhile, I have between 1,000 and 2,000 kind of trap shops or illegal shops around me that are selling product typically that has failed testing, and so is not able to reach the shelves in a legal rec market. And they're not charging taxes, and there's a number of things. And even at that time, there were brands that would sell to me on the legal side and still be able to sell to them. So it was really a problem.
How do you get rid of them? I mean, let's say it's legal tomorrow. How do you get rid of them?
Well, yeah. I mean, in California, it was really a mess when it went legal. They did not. This is probably more specific to LA than the rest of the state. Like, there's over 2,000 illegal stores that, you could still pull up on Weed Maps and go to. And you would, as a consumer, have no idea, in a way, what is a legal licensed cannabis dispensary with clean product versus one where, you got a bunch of kind of gangsters almost running it and just looking to make a buck. And, we did lose customers through it. As my company went through, we purchased licenses that were operating. And, as soon as we started charging taxes, that was a legal requirement from us. We lost a lot of patients to those trap shops. But sure enough, 2-3 months later, they're like, hey, I was just in the ER, or so-and-so was super sick. It's like, I got sick from going to that shop down the street. It's like, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So welcome back. That was part of it.
What is your role in the market? You say you sell legal weed, but what?
Yeah, so a lot of my experience has been sales, B2B, so business to business. So I've mostly been on the vendor side, manufacturing side of it. And currently I work for the Shango brand in Arizona under the True Harvest license. We are one of the largest indoor producers of fine marijuana flower. That's really our main focus, is putting out clean, high quality flower. And here in the desert, it's Arizona has a stigma of dry and dry weed that's just bad, more or less, like compared to other markets where Shango's operated in multiple states and started in Oregon. And we bring that kind of West Coast sort of sticky kind of feel that most cannabis consumers would know and love. That's what we bring to the Arizona market.
This is baked goods, with flour for baked goods?
Yeah, no. This is flower. When I talk flower, I'm talking bud, like marijuana.
The actual flower,
Flower,
FLOW.
like the buds. Yes, sir. Yes,
FLOWER.
that's what we call it. We call it
Oh,
flower.
yeah.
So yeah, but you could just call it straight weed.
Be a weed or a plant. Flower sounds better than calling something a weed or even.
It's true. It's true. Call it what you will, but that is typically how we would call it in the industry. We call it flower. We call vape oil an extract, and things like that. An edible, would be an edible, and a beverage would probably fit under the edible side of
Well,
things.
what's the best way to consume this? I mean, if you're talking about getting the most out of the the flower, the plant.
Yeah. Well,
That's why
it
they were
really
smoking it
depends.
directly, right? You have it, you smoke it directly. You're getting it directly in, but you're also getting the bad thing. So, talk about the process. As I understand, they're extracting that while sort of filtering out the bad stuff, and that could go into tea and all that. But you're losing a lot of it to produce, a drink or even a gummy.
Correct. Really, from my experience, and I always do, and my passion is the wellness side and therapeutic side of things. Even though much of what I currently work with and sell is typically consumed more recreationally, but it really depends on what you're looking to target and what you're looking to do. 'Cause I know, Matt, you said you've never smoked anything, so I wouldn't say to go and try to smoke a joint. That probably wouldn't go over too well for you, right?
Yeah.
However, if you like beer or you like to have the odd drink or so, then I think a beverage would be a great way for you to enter and try that. Whereas, our product, the flower, the bud that we cultivate and grow, we would sell in bulk to a producer or processor that can refine those cannabinoids into a format that can be put into a beverage. So although we don't ourselves currently make beverages, the product that we produce would be then, sold in a strategic partnership to a brand that would take it, refine it, and create one too. So, we're part of that supply chain in a way. As a lot of these markets, there are a lot of opportunities. Each brand will have its specialty, and a lot of the ones that fail, honestly, are ones that try to do everything and don't stick to what they do well or what their brand is really focused on. There are a lot that really just, oh, we can do this, do that, and it's like can't do everything. Right. And, to the point earlier as well, I meant to make when your friend was saying, or your friend that was addicted, I think there is such a thing as too much of a good thing
Yeah.
as well, too, and that goes for more or less anything, even if that's broccoli or carrots or something like that as well. You have that 10 times a day. Well, your body's probably not going to like that too much.
Yeah, I agree with that. If everything goes legal tomorrow, how does your world change?
Yeah, I mean that is pretty complicated because I'm not sure how that would work for licensed operators. Here in Arizona, let's say if you wanted to own a dispensary license, you would be able to cultivate and manufacture and distribute your products as well. Here, a license would allow you to do all of that, but a license here is also worth $20 to $25 million, and that's not the property; that's the license.
Yeah. If it goes
So
if it goes free everywhere, that the licenses will be way cheaper than that.
right, right. So that it does need there needs to be some sort of reform and making it fair for the legacy or the operators that have done everything the right way and pushed it to get to this point.
But
Not that they should get preferential treatment, but it should be made right in some way.
but there's a cost, demand, supply when things are up that people overpay for, and later it becomes a lot cheaper. Technology is a big, that's big in technology. It's going to be I mean, it's going to be tough. The people who spent all this money, they're going to be out. It's not going to be as good for them.
Right, right. Well,
I don't know how to do that.
yeah, I mean, it really is, because currently a lot of the largest company, we're talking about publicly traded companies. And, and a lot of the things holding it back from federal legalization, the point you brought up earlier, it's like we're talking about big pharma, we're talking about tobacco lobbyists and things like that, That's a lot of the linchpin that's holding it back.
But it's worth it for them at 25. I mean, they don't go into this lightly. They know the math on all this, and they know that it's going to be legal federally in our lifetime. I mean, it's going to. I can't see any way around it. So
Right.
they know that. So and there's obviously a lot of money in it. So I'm not going to feel as badly for those who do. Um, the big question, one of the big questions is, if we do it, do we forgive the people who broke the law? And I say
Right.
no. It was clearly illegal when you did it. It's not that hard to follow the rules. If it's illegal and you shouldn't have done it, you get punished. But my understanding is there's a lot of people who are punished harshly for very little. They're just not,
Right.
it isn't commensurate with what they did relative to people who are raping and killing and all that. So
Right.
another issue, I think, I don't say just let everyone go, because again, they did stuff that was illegal. But let's take a look at what was their punishment. What did they do? Really?
Absolutely. And there are, especially in, California specifically, there's a Last Prisoner Project. There are, criminal reform movements to, free people that have, let's say, a couple joints or something that's just for personal use versus someone that's trafficking, across state lines or across, um, you know, national lines and things like that. Like I don't see that as comparing apples to apples. That's apples to oranges to me. You're talking about, organized crime versus someone that's, looking for
Yeah,
access to medicine or, consume
it's
a couple
it's
joints.
probably the officers who did them were probably doing something they shouldn't have done and given harsh treatment. Obviously, it's talk about a lot of people of minorities is really what the majority of these people are. So
Yeah.
we're looking at who put them there than what they did and try and get back to there.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of prejudice, obviously, that's gone on. And, I think a lot of it is, in certain cases, being respectful of law enforcement too. A lot of the times, like, hey, if you have a couple joints on you, you try to hide it or you lie to an officer about it. Well, it's probably not going to go over that well necessarily when they find it, sort of thing, right? Or and it is complicated. And now in the legal side and federal legal side too, something that really hasn't been figured out is how law enforcement will consider or will enforce impaired driving when it comes to marijuana use as well. I think that's probably another thing in a way that's holding it up. I know that on a state level, officers often don't know what to do. There could be a mouth swab that will test for THC, but other than that, there's really not too much. I mean, a blood test is going to take a lot of time. THC can take, up to 30 days to leave your system.
Yeah.
So, that's definitely something else that needs to be considered. Because it's not like alcohol in that sense, that's for sure.
No, I have bad allergies right now. You pull me over, you might think I was smoking on something or doing.
Exactly. Yeah. But if a skunk, if someone ran over a skunk or something nearby and someone pulled you over when you're sniffling and your eyes were super red, then yeah, you could get nailed for something.
Yeah, who knows? There's a lot of products out there we talk about, in edibles and the drink space. Are you trying these? Is that part of what you're, doing?
Yeah.
It's such a rush to get into it because it's such a hot industry. How much of these products are legit? Are they have staying power? Are they even good? Because or people are just going to like almost like NFTs and all this. People are just throwing stuff out there because they're like, oh, let's see if this hits. Are there a lot more good than bad?
Yeah, well, there's varying degrees, and there's going to be like so many different types of products and so many variations of the same. And prior to Palo Verde Solutions was my company that I had started, and a lot of what I do with that is consulting on bringing brands to market, finding the pieces, recipes or things that are working and not working. Because having an amazing recipe or actual product that works, does not mean it's going to sell. Like, it does come down to packaging and branding and, go to market strategy and things like that as well. They're on the other side, there are brands that actually have maybe a poor or weak product inside, but they crush it with the packaging and branding and marketing and things like that, where that will actually sell more than a product that, might be the most effective. So a lot of what I did was trying to help brands and new products coming in to find, the way through that will speak to the consumer and will poise them for success. But yeah, I've tried pretty much a little bit of everything. And it's part of what we need to do, but at the same time, during the day, I don't consume. I need to have my brain on so I can work. And I'm a dad, and I don't want to be high all the whole time on with my kids and whatnot either. So, but it's also not always about being high. Like I am a CBD consumer. I have chronic back pain, and CBD will not get you high. However, it does help get me through the day as I drive a lot. I'm in sales, so but a lot of it is a tough question because there's thousands of products out there. It's similar to alcohol. There's the new seltzer waters that are out, or ranch waters and things like that, kind of taking over. All the beer breweries are kind of putting out their new twists on consuming alcohol in a can, cocktails in a can, and things like that. There will always be evolutions, but yeah, I feel like we're still scratching the surface on the potential of the plant. It's going to be pretty crazy.
As of now, it's like mixed signals whether or not like Coke and Pepsi will get into this sort of thing, or if you look at like a Frito-Lay and all of them, are they going to get into this? I assume they will eventually. Obviously, if it becomes legal everywhere, but there is still some risk in them getting into it. They could have a company in their portfolio. It's still, under the same thing. Do you anticipate that going mainstream?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it has happened. So, I think it was Coca-Cola heavily invested in a company. My friend or a colleague of mine is heavily invested in, called Tilray, which is a Canadian company. And he was invested in prior to the announcement, and the stock went up like 200 or 300%. It was just crazy with that single announcement, even though I don't think it actually came to fruition. However, they have looked to enter the market. You have Pabst Blue Ribbon that's currently putting out a beverage, and they're dabbling. They're dipping their toes in. Currently, is what's happening.
I'm probably not going to get. I'm not drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon, so I'm probably not going to get their cannabis product. Although maybe it'll be better than their beer. Although they have long power, they got staying power, and for the low end type of
right. And Jones Soda is another one. Mary Jones is what they call it now.
It's is that what the casual person will try? A beverage before a gummy, before a vape? Do you think?
I do see it that way, and from my perspective, for maybe an prior anti-cannabis consumer, or one that's looking to try something, I think a beverage is a great way to do so, because one, the onset, or the amount of time that it takes for you to feel the effect of the cannabinoids is a little quicker than an edible, where you have to eat it, digest it. You'll absorb it sublingually through your mouth a little bit, and you'll feel the effects within 10-15 minutes. And you can control it much like an alcoholic beverage in that sense too.
What is the effect? I mean, I'm a very laid back, calm person. I would say I never needed to smoke, because I'd probably act the same way as if I would. Does it make you sleepy, lethargic? Obviously more relaxed. You could use any of those words to describe.
Yeah, it can do that, but it could also give you energy depending on the type of strain, cannabinoid ratios, and terpenes that are in there. So we say terpenes, there could be limonene or pinene or other things in there, where pinene is, one of the main ingredients in pine salt as well. Limonene comes from, that's where you get the flavor from the lemon. And these are all predominant in cannabis plants, which can all have an effect on the effect that you feel as well. So it does depend on those ratios and how the product is manufactured, and that most people will take that into consideration. There will be a daytime, a midday, or a nighttime version of the same product to that point. So, you're getting the desired effect.
You think most people are taking the time to figure out what they should be taking? If they're, I mean, aren't most people not necessarily the buyer of the product, but they're like, hey, I have this. Do you want some? We're at a party. We're on vacation. We're out. And
Yeah. That could be true, which, can be a slippery slope. That's for sure with that. I mean, you don't even know what's in it or whatnot. So, especially if you're not I don't want to say daily consumer. They don't have to be a daily consumer. If you're not a regular consumer, I would be wary of, trying something for the first time that someone just handed to you, unless, you really trust them. Because, there are very high potency products out there that can really, twist someone up that has never tried it before.
Yeah.
You would want to enter with the low dose, especially on the edible side, so you're not having a negative experience. Because if you take too much of an edible, you're in for a ride, and it can be too much and overwhelming.
My friend told the story where he was in somewhere that was legal and bought, but they forgot to tell him how much was in this little piece. And, instead of taking a little piece, they ate the whole thing. And it was like, knocked them on their ass.
Yep. I've heard that many times. And it does, it depends on the market itself. Edibles do need to be dosed in ways, where someone like myself or more experienced consumer would maybe take 2 or 3 gummies or edibles, versus someone like your buddy should start with just one. And maybe he ate the whole thing, which would even knock me on my ass.
Yeah, I think it was a baked good instead of a gummy, but yeah, same.
Same idea though. It is, right? They should have told him, it's like, well, chop it up into 10 little pieces and take one. Or really, it should have been packaged in a way that he couldn't have even had that experience at all, and that it could have been avoided, right?
With the uncertainty and the volatility of the market, how does someone know when to get in? I mean, is now a good time? Is it better if you were in already? Is it going to be better, in the near future? Obviously, November's coming up. It's on a lot of ballots right now.
The advantage, long story short, I think, is being one of the first to market. In certain states where it's on the ballot, and maybe it's medical and it's going to be going recreational. Like, that would really be the time, I feel like, to get into a market. Or if you're trying to enter, super established market, like, I wouldn't advise anyone to try to enter California. I think even a lot of people that have been in that market for years have struggled, and that state has really not given brands or any company an opportunity for success. It's overtaxed, overregulated, and it really doesn't make sense for business. Where a state like Arizona, many people are looking to enter this market because it is more friendly to business and the regulations make sense. However, you only have 120 licenses. So if you wanted to come in, you'd have to make a partnership with the licensee to do it, which typically means deep pockets, and it is established here. So I think, long story short, it would be, to enter a market that's new. Or, now anyone can make a hemp-based product that can have THC in it as well. So that's a whole thing, almost separate conversation, in the sense of, you or me, Matt, can make a cannabis beverage, let's say, with 5 milligrams of THC in it, and, do our own markups, maybe be $3 to $5. Where compared to someone in the recreational market making that product, there's no way that they can compete on price with all the regulations and overhead costs that it takes to operate in that market too. So it is really complicated. And
isn't that just making a beverage that has low content, but you just drink more of it to get the intended effect?
And that is kind of how it is on the hemp side. So I'll actually break it down. So in 2018, it was called the Farm Act was passed, which allowed farmers to finally extract the hemp flower. So hemp has a bud like marijuana does as well. I specify hemp and marijuana because they're both from the cannabis family. So you say cannabis, that includes both. There'll be different ratios of cannabinoids there, but hemp is very low in THC. It's 0%, 0.03%, which made it allowable to consume under the Farm Act. And so in there, though, they put regulations to make sure that, let's say, an edible product, dry weight by volume, has less than 0.03%, which makes it legal. That makes it a hemp product. But now there are products out there where you can make a gummy that is slightly larger that can have less than 0.03% THC dry weight by volume, but still have 5 to 10 milligrams of THC in there that can get you high, that would actually, compare to one that you could get in a dispensary as well. So, it's really crazy, but it is legal. Honestly,
Yeah.
it really is. And so there needs to be some reform in there, though. And there is a revision, I believe, that's coming to the Farm Act that should be coming in 2023 to kind of specify on these cannabinoids, because it is legal. It's legal to distribute across state lines. There's certain states that have kind of outlawed it, but no one's really enforcing it. And I think that it's something that most marijuana operators, it's not even really on their radar necessarily either. But I think it should be, because now in Minnesota, they've actually allowed cannabis beverages to be served at a bar. These are hemp-based beverages, but they're hemp-based THC beverages. It will feel the same. I've tried it; it will feel the same. So, yeah, it's really it's a wild space to be in.
Yeah, it's going to be the Wild Wild West, which is, look, it's on the way. There's enough states that are doing it, and it's one of those things that people are going to do it, and you can go from one place to the next. It's so easy you could drive through 3 states within 20 minutes, and certain states, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's legal here, it's illegal there. Or, like the gambling. I go to New Jersey, I could put a bet on my phone, but my phone knows once I'm in Florida, I can't make that bet. Well, I know people who are there who can make the bet.
Right. Well, you
I
just
know
need a
people who are in
VPN.
Arizona who can.
Yeah, no, it's true. And you will find a lot of the most successful dispensaries in a given state will be in those kind of triangle type areas where the states kind of connect. As let's say Idaho is one that might be one of the very last to legalize any form of cannabis. So that all the neighboring states, have put a dispensary real close to the Idaho border, and they're doing pretty darn well.
Yeah, I mean, I flew into Cincinnati last month, and you land in Kentucky. I went to Omaha for the College World Series, and you fly into Iowa, which is right there. So I mean, all these states they're so close, and it's one of those things with the guns too. Like, hey, the big problem, we got a gun problem in this area. Well, that's not where the guns are coming from. They just happen to be taking them, and that's where the violence is. So
It's true.
it's a tough. I don't envy the people who have to make these decisions, because there's going to be challengers on both sides. Is it legit? Are you doing it for the right reason? There's positives and that you could argue on each side. I say let's figure out how to make it safest for everyone, and make it legit. Which
Right.
is
No, absolutely. Like let's make it safe. Let's make it medicine, or a clean product, even if it is recreational, however you want to call it. There needs to be good practices, and if that means bringing the FDA into the picture, then so be it. And you need to level the playing field there. And a lot of it is I touched on earlier, but access to banking. It is really tough, and we're doing huge numbers in this industry, like billions of dollars a year across multiple states. But until the last couple of years, you couldn't even have a bank account technically. So there's all these workarounds, and then people are getting locked up for laundering money or sending it through the Caymans and this and that. But it's like, what else are we supposed to do? Kind of thing.
well, let's talk about the FDA for a second. With all the benefits medically, what's the hesitancy for them to take a stance and push legislation?
It's a good question. I think it is because it's even on the CBD side of it, they really kind of refused to step in, which has really held it back in general. I think it's held back the marijuana legalization on a federal level too. It's like we can't even figure out CBD, which is not psychoactive or will not get you high or impaired. Impaired is probably a better word, mentally. Like, how can we do it with something that is impaired, right?
The CBD can knock you out. I mean, but so can, there's aspirins and Advils, those.
Absolutely. Matt, even though maybe you have or haven't tried CBD ever in your life, you create cannabidiol or CBD in your body. It's in your endocannabinoid system. That's why it works so rapidly. Is you have it in you and you're meant to receive it. It's really interesting. You think about what came first, humans or the cannabis plant. And we likely evolved symbiotically with the plant. Just the way that our endocannabinoid system works within our bodies, it touches every system within us. And yeah, the fact that the FDA can't wrap their head around it, and that is largely why we can't make medical claims around the plant, because it hasn't been FDA approved. You can't say it heals anything or treats anything because the FDA hasn't blessed it to say that it has. Meanwhile, there's loads of medical research out there now, and clinical trials and things like that have proven that it does work. It does treat ailments when done under the correct supervision and correct ratios. So the fact that they haven't, I feel like there's something nefarious at play.
What about the other side? There's research out there to show that it shouldn't be legal too, or I mean, everyone's pretty much admitted.
I haven't seen a thing that's convinced me otherwise yet, but that's me. I'm a little prejudiced, obviously.
That's hard to. I'm really so indifferent.
I'm probably not the right one to talk to you about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so indifferent about it. I want things to make sense, and right now it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, honestly, and especially compare it to alcohol. And I have a feeling that is likely where once things get legal on a federal level, you'll see a lot of the high THC products will start to go away. There will be less of the Everclear, Bacardi 151 type products that will be available generally to a consumer. It'd be more like, less than 20% alcoholic type beverages and things like that are available. So you can control your high, and then makes it easier for law enforcement and things like that to control people as well.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting, but it's coming. It's coming.
It is. It has to.
As more states do, it's just more about making sense, common sense. But anytime you talk about money, which is it's a big issue. There's a lot of money at stake for a lot of people, and you can understand why. There's there's trouble getting stuff passed, or why there's trouble when it is passed with keeping everything on the up and up and making sure that the licenses and all this doesn't get into the wrong hands.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff out there there's a lot of stuff out there that is very difficult to regulate.
At least, and it is part of it when he's staying true to the spirit of the plant too. It's like it is not meant to be, the spirit of it is not meant to be taken advantage of for financial gain. I don't feel like, but that it is up to us, up to consumers, and the people that kind of, I guess ideally create a system that's accountable to that.
But I think more people than not are getting into it because of the money. I think more people than not were getting into the use of this back in the day, not for the medical use of it, although there's some medical advantages to it. But and that's okay. It's interesting because for me, a lot of it was, hey, I was an athlete. I'm not going to smoke anything, and it's illegal. So why do something illegal when there's a lot of other options that aren't illegal? It's a different conversation today, but there's still, if it's legal tomorrow, I don't know that I'm going to start doing it. But I'd be more inclined to try it, at least in some form.
And that's an interesting angle that you brought up with the athletes too, because it is something
they smoke like crazy.
Right. Well, we have celebrity kind of brands and athletes come through our facility quite often. I've gotten to meet quite a few and hear their story. They're like, I consumed my whole career.
Yeah. No, during, I mean,
It wasn't allowed, but I did.
no, but these athletes were smoking cigarettes too. It was like, it's crazy. It's
Yes.
nuts.
But to hear some of the stories and how it really did transform their lives in the sense of, we're not talking a medicine cabinet, we're talking like a pantry of prescription drugs, and cannabis replaced that,
Yeah.
and it actually, made them a better father, made them a better athlete. They hurt less, they had less, post concussion syndrome symptoms and all kinds of things. And, any prescription drug will have a side effect. And, cannabis's side effect is euphoria.
Well, the bad actors are going to ruin things for the good in everything. And I think that's it's a concern. It's a legitimate concern in this industry. And,
Mhm.
but again, the ship is on the way. The train
It
is.
is. It is. It was a real interesting statistic when I saw. It's like, wow, there's more cannabis smokers than tobacco smokers. Like the cat's out there. There's no slowing it down now. I think
This decade, will it happen this decade?
yeah. In 10 years, I feel like 10 years. 5 would be ambitious, but I feel like within 10, I think so.
And then if it becomes legal in enough states, does it even matter if it's
Well, that's the point. I mean, we're already at over half the states are legal. So at what point does the federal government kind of give up on, the enforcement of it in a way? Like,
legal recreationally or at least medicinally?
yes, I believe we're at 26 states recreationally,
Really?
perhaps more, as of today. And,
Yeah,
so.
I wouldn't have guessed that, and I wouldn't even be able to name, the usual suspects that you know of, where everyone.
And then, yeah, so, at least on a medicinal level, I haven't looked at the map very recently, but, the movement's happening, it's coming. And, I think once we get over, 30 states that are legal recreationally, well, what's the holdup here now? I think that's kind of the people have spoken at that point.
I think so, and again, it's one of those things. I'm not going to sign it. People ask me, I'm not going to sign a petition for it, but I'm not gonna be mad if it gets passed because if there's plenty of things that aren't for me that I think should be allowed. That's the vision. You should be. It's one of the things for me, even in business. Like I don't see it. It's not for me. I'm not the market, but yeah, it makes sense. So let's see what happens.
Right. Everyone should have a shot. And, it's still a free country.
Yeah, there's still you got to worry about the bad lives. If lives, whatever it is, it could be money, it could be health, it could be incidents, violence. Who knows?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
still got to worry about that. Dazed and Confused, by and large, known as the best stoner movie. What you have any other ones on? I mean, anything else that comes to
It
mind?
was funny. My wife and I were just chatting about the Cheech and Chong ones way
Yeah,
back, and it's like, holy cow! Because I wasn't
that's
even
30
born,
years ago.
but yeah, born when those movies were originally made necessarily, and I thought they were made pre in the '70s.
Yeah, oh
But
yeah,
it's like such a cultural piece, as Tommy Chong's heavily involved in the industry legally, and but most of the people now, don't even identify with that and with the culture there. So, new movies, I always liked Half Baked. I'm a Dave Chappelle fan, so that was
yeah.
always a
Hey,
real good one too. But yeah, more recently, I think movies have been kind of poor. Not a fan of Pineapple Express or some of the
no,
other ones.
yeah.
I think a lot of the best ones are probably at least 10 years old or so.
Dazed and Confused, 30 years old next year. I just
That's wild.
That's
But
crazy. I think.
and I think what I like about those movies is it makes it fun. Sure it's silly and whatnot, but I think that's what it's like to live and work in the industry. It's fun. It's challenging, but it's fun. And the effect of the plant, usually it's fun. And even if you're going for medicinal benefit, you need help with appetite. If you're going through chemo or whatnot, like it's helping you. And chances are you're having a little more fun along the way too.
Yeah. I mentioned The Gentleman, a really good movie based around that. Probably not the image that the industry wants to see because there's greed and violence and it's crime crime based, but really, really well done movie. Funny and interesting movie for anyone who hasn't seen it with Matthew McConaughey. I wish you well. I know it's gonna be sooner than later, and it sounds like you're in a good position wherever you are to bring knowledge and education, which is very important. And
Mm-hmm.
as the market evolves, it's going to be needed. So we need to have more people like you in the industry, in it for the right reasons and wanting to do it the right way. We're going to let you out of the Wolff Den with the same question we let everyone go. You can spend a day with anyone in the world, 24 hours. They have to be alive. You can't be related to them. Who would you choose, and what would you guys do?
Yeah, it goes back to an answer that I had to the question. I would say, call it John Lennon. I love to smoke a joint with him.
Oh, then it's got to be alive. They got to be alive.
Oh, they got to be alive.
Yeah, too
Crap.
easy.
Okay. Um, that being said, go back to my boy Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, Chappelle would be great. A great choice. I think he's been said before. Be great to hang out with Dave for a day. Uh, but who knows? We're gonna try and make it happen. If we have enough money and influence, we can make any of this stuff happen. Check
Definitely.
out PalaVerdeSolutions.com or connect with Greg on LinkedIn if you want some more information about the industry and where it's headed. Really appreciate your time here today. It's a controversial topic, but I think as we've discussed, it's on the way. So
Mhm.
if it does, we'll get you on again and really talk about where the industry is at and where it's going to go.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me on, Matt. I'd love to chat more about it as, each year we get less controversial.
Yeah, agreed. Have a great day, a safe weekend, and we got some more episodes next week. Stay tuned.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one. Bye,
All right.
everyone.
Bye.